From the AM/FM 24/7 radio network, broadcasting from AM and FM stations around the country. Welcome to the Small Business Administration award-winning School for Startups Radio, where we talk all things small business and entrepreneurship. Now, here is your host, the guy that believes anyone can be a successful entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship is not about creativity, risk, or passion, Jim Beach.
Welcome back to School for Startups Radio. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope you enjoyed Jesse and my conversation about games. I am incredibly honored and excited now to introduce you to my next guest. His name is Scott Jones, and listen to this resume. At the age of 25, he started a company that enabled the cell phone industry to really operate. He sold it later for $843 million. I don't know if he got every penny of that, but still, damn. Anyway, he then started a company called ChaCha, which has done over 1 billion, answered over 1 billion questions to 32 million unique users a month. That company is one of the most important integrated platforms out there. I'm really excited to learn more about it. He is also the entrepreneur in residence at ElevenFifty, which we will talk about as well. I am very excited to talk with Scott Jones. Scott, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks, Jim. And I'm honored and excited to be here.
Well, I was wrong about Boston Technologies. It wasn't in the cell industry. It was the one that makes iTunes work. Is that right?
Well, there's a couple of different, actually several companies that I've done. The first one, you're right, was at age 25, and it was in the voicemail business, but you said that it enabled mobile phones, and in part you're right, because remember, back then there were answering machines on desks and kitchen counters, and there were cell phones about the size of bricks back then, and it was going to be pretty difficult to slam one of those answering machines into, a brick-sized cell phone. And so putting that voicemail capability in the central office switch really did help enable, the mobile, cellular industry.
One of the things we talk about on this show is that you don't have to be creative to be an entrepreneur. You can just go copy a business idea and run with it, and that's cool enough for us. Does that offend you, being one of the most innovative guys out there? You've got patents left and right. Does my philosophy that creativity isn't really important offend you, Scott?
Well, I saw that on your site, and, at first I think I wanted to be offended, but because I do apply a lot of creativity to what I do. But then I thought about, well, what do I lecture at my entrepreneur classes at MIT and Purdue and IU? And one of the things I always say is the idea is really only 1% of it. And, it could be my idea or it could be somebody else's idea, but 99% of the work is, actually executing with excellence. So I think you're right, that, it's not so much the creativity that really counts. To be a successful entrepreneur, it's the other 99% of whatever it takes to freaking get the job done.
Well, I say that at the bank, they don't give you any extra 10 points because you came up with a new idea. Your customers don't say, oh, that was really creative. Let me pay you more than what you asked for. So I appreciate that. But on the other hand, Scott, you're one of the most creative, innovative people on earth. What advice can you give us non-innovators to be more like you, to be more creative? How can I learn to be an innovator? Right. Or can I?
I think there are some natural instincts, but really most of it can be learned by just forcing yourself to think outside the box. And so, on my website at scottajones.com, I talk a little bit about this, and I've lectured a fair amount about it, where you can just do little things throughout the day to make your brain go places that it wouldn't normally go. Take a different way to work. Use your left hand when you're eating. Just do things differently. And when you do it, it forces you to take a different perspective. Your body, your mind is not on autopilot. And when you do that, ideas just start to come. And also, I find that if you can sort of get rid of the distractions of life, so it used to be on airplanes, it was my favorite time, and I have so many ideas in my file cabinets that are written on barf bags. because I was in an airplane
I love it.
with no distractions. And these days it's a little harder because now you can do just about anything while you're on the airplane, including phone calls and be connected to the internet. So it's full of distractions. When I did voicemail at in my mid-20s, I was traveling up to Walden Pond, the same one that Henry David Thoreau. Yeah, and it was. I thought it was going to be really quiet and distraction free, which it mostly was, except there was a train that came through a couple of times a day that was, came right next to the pond and completely disrupted my thinking. And I came to find out that train was there when Henry David Thoreau was there, so he was getting distracted too.
I find I'm not creative on an airplane. I'm just mad on an airplane. I'm creative when I'm mowing the lawn, shaving, taking a shower, driving. What is it about these learned things that we do so repetitively that allow us to become more creative? Do you find that you're a bald, follically challenged man like myself? When you're shaving, is your mind in a different place?
It is. I mean, I think the goal here is to get outside autopilot. So, in your thinking. Now, when you're shaving or showering, maybe the autopilot is good because then you can let your mind roam into other areas. But you kind of have to, say, to yourself, yeah, I'm going to let that happen, and I'm not going to, let distractions, interrupt me. So I find that you have to be, thoughtful about it. You have to be intentional, right? You have to say, I'm going to allow myself to drift into these other areas and let my imagination run wild. And it's okay that 20 of the things that come to mind are stupid and aren't going to go anywhere. But it's that next idea that, hey, there's something to this. And, but even when those come up, I like to, sleep on it maybe 3 days and come back. I write it down right away because if I don't, I absolutely will forget that fantastic idea. And so I write it down and I come back to it a few days later. And if I still love it, then I'll probably tell a friend or my wife about it and see how they react to it. And if I, get good reactions all around, then I know I'm maybe onto something.
The process that you described there almost sounds like brainstorming. I had a guest who has taken brainstorming apart. He was on about 6 months ago and said that it's a horrible process. Do you like the brainstorm process? Do you like coming up with dumb, bad ideas, acknowledging that they're dumb and saying, but it led to this really great one? What do you think about
right.
that?
That's the way it always happens is, you brainstorm and it's just, it's wonderful to have a lot of stupid ideas because you end up putting together 2 or 3 of those stupid ideas or taking the best parts and qualities of a certain idea and merging it with something else that comes up later. I mean, that process is really fun. And I built a room in my house for exactly that process. It's off on the, depending on how you measure floors, the 5th floor of the house. It's up in what used to be an attic. And I covered it in whiteboard. So the ceiling, the walls, everything's whiteboard. And, there's 50 markers up there. And, I can get away from all distractions, no phones, no people coming through. And I've got this whiteboard that's just a clean slate. And I can make it a clean slate anytime I want. And it's just, great to go up there either by myself or I'll take, a handful of people up. And, we'll all brainstorm together. And I do what's called green light sessions where there is no bad idea. You can't laugh at somebody's idea. You can't criticize it. It's a green light. Everything's a good idea. And then after that's over, might be 20 minutes, might be 2 hours later, then we say, okay, well, let's take all of those ideas and let's start crossing some off the list. And let's try to prioritize what are the best things we got up on the whiteboard. And then those are the ones that you work with and that you continue to brainstorm with.
Are you more creative when you're alone or when you invite some friends up to your very strange room in the attic?
Well, I don't know that I'm more creative in either of those situations. It depends. So I find that if I had a really good night's sleep and, something triggered me to go down a line of thinking that's rich, that can be a really gratifying time, to think through those ideas by myself, where I don't get interrupted and I can, give it some depth of thought that's really important. On other occasions, if I have a problem to solve, I don't have all the answers, and I love the dynamics that happen when you get the right group of people together, which is usually trying to find people who don't think like I do. They think from a different perspective and through a different lens, and I try to pull together usually a small group, 3, 4, 5, 6. Above 6, then it's just too many ideas, too much. It becomes distracting, and so it's usually between 3 and 6. That's a great group, assuming they have come from different places. That's when the really best ideas bubble up. Even when I've come up with something on my own and had my think time on my own, I'd like to then put it into that cauldron, to really crystallize something good.
Is there bad creativity, Scott?
I'm sure there is. It's not coming to mind right now because, my view is, even bad creativity, you can sort of, turn it around and spin it and pull some good things out of it. I tend to try and find the good in everything. So, I suspect there is, but that's not how I think about it.
Right. What is the silliest idea, quote unquote, the societal idea that was laughed at that you made the most money from?
Oh, I thought you were going to leave off the most money from. So I'll tell you that
Do
one.
both. Give me both answers.
Yeah, there was an actual version of this because I never actually went and made it, but charcoal filtered underwear. My wife always makes fun of that one. But they did. Somebody made it. I don't know if they were, successful with it. Let's see. In terms of idea that actually made money, that was sort of a crazy idea. I'm not really thinking of anything because the ones that made money, sort of made sense.
Yeah, but at first people laughed at you. Voicemail, ha 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 ha, silly boy. Nothing like that.
Thinking back, that was a couple of decades ago, but there were a number of people who were saying, "Why would you make me talk to a machine?" Remember, way back when there was a phase of a couple of years when mostly people were just talking on the phone to each other, and then as they got into answering machines and into voicemail, there were plenty of people who said, why are you making me talk to a machine? They took offense at having to talk to that machine. And then there was a transition 2 or 3 years later where people thought, oh, well, I don't have to keep calling you, to hunt you down. I can just leave your message, and now the ball's in your court, and it's, you're the bad guy if you don't, respond to what I've now left at your doorstep. And there was a shift then, but I don't know that they were laughing at me as much as being bothered by the fact that I would make somebody talk to a machine instead of a real person.
You operate out of Indiana. You've made a couple of references, Purdue and such. Has your career been hindered by not going ahead and moving to Silicon Valley? Would you have been even more successful, Scott, if you had taken the plunge? And you were at MIT, obviously a cauldron of everything academic and intellectual. But, here in Atlanta, they make fun of us because we're not part of the Valley. Address that, please. Do you think you would have been better off moving to the Valley despite what your wife would have said about it?
I think that there are advantages everywhere. So being in the Valley, obviously, you've got this just amazing critical mass of talent. Anything you might need to hire for a tech company, you can find it. But the downside of that, the double-edged sword is, and you're going to compete with all those other great ideas, to get that talent to come to your baby. And you see the Google and Facebooks and the Twitters and everybody else and all the long list of startups fighting over talent out there. So it's always a double-edged sword. If you're here in Indiana, if you're in Georgia, my view is, in Indiana we have some wonderful universities. We've got Purdue, IU, Rose-Hulman, which is top undergraduate engineering school. You got Notre Dame, and a long list of other universities and colleges producing all of these graduates, many of whom then go to the coasts. But the really nice benefit of all of those institutions is they're creating talent, so it's fairly easy to start up a tech company here and find the talent that's needed. And Jeff Bezos invested in one of my companies, and one of the things he told me when he made the investment is, "Hey, you're lucky that you're in Indiana because you don't have to compete for the employees. You don't have them all jumping ship to go to some other thing because there's less competition for that talent." And so I think it's possible to build fantastic companies. One of the best examples was ExactTarget here in Indianapolis. They were bought by Salesforce for $2.5 billion about a year ago, and so it's very possible to create wonderful, high growth, significant companies here in the Midwest, and I'm sure the same thing is true in Atlanta. I know the same thing is true in Atlanta. Great universities and great companies can come from anywhere.
I know that you can teach someone to be an app developer. Indiana University has one of the top entrepreneurship programs in the world. Is it possible to teach entrepreneurship, or are you born that way? Entrepreneurs born with a missing gene?
I think that there are certainly characteristics of people that make them good entrepreneurs, a willingness to stick to it when others would not, and also, a sense of, when to fold them if necessary and move on to the next thing, fail fast. But having said that, I think you can teach entrepreneurship skills, and I've taught at MIT with my friend Jack Gill courses on entrepreneurship. I've taught at IU and Purdue and IUPUI here in the city. And you can absolutely teach people how to be entrepreneurs and how to be good ones. And many of the people who took these courses, went on to start their own companies and be quite successful. So, I think if you've already got that gleam in your eye, and you've got an idea and you want to run with it and you're passionate about it, by taking a course on entrepreneurship or just studying on your own on the internet or from a book, you can learn all the things you need in order to be a successful entrepreneur. Here at I just want to talk a minute about our new school at 1150.
Please.
We've got tons of people coming in here wanting to write apps and build websites. But we're one of the first in the country to offer Swift programming, which is Apple's new language for iOS 8. And we're able to take people who have almost no programming experience, in some cases no programming experience. We prefer that they have a little bit of HTML or some language, coming into the class. But we've taken people who have nothing, and in 7 days, 7 very intensive, immersive days, they open their laptop on Saturday morning and they basically don't close it until the next Friday. And they're hammering out code, building what we call $3 billion apps. So, our version of Snapchat, our version of Tinder, our version of Evernote. And each of these students builds their own version and can put it in the store. They can, reskin it, they can add features to it. But by the time they walk out 7 days later, they know how to build apps for the iPhone in the new language that hardly anybody knows yet. And so we're really excited about that. And for those who have taken the class, about half of them are the next day writing their own apps, which has been really exciting to watch. And for those that are interested in continuing to still have training wheels on, we have what we call the App Apprenticeship Program, where we put them in. They become apprentices on projects that we're doing here at 1150, either subcontracting for other companies or building our own apps internally. They can immediately, have the mentorship that continues to grow their skills. They're learning while on the job, and they're getting paid for it. So unlike the classes where tuition is paid, we start paying our apprentices. It's not what you can make in the market when you're ready to jump out of the nest. We'll kick you out of the nest if we think you're ready, and then you're getting fairly significant compensation for the skills you've learned in our program.
Scott, one of my other silly ideas is that passion is not required. I am passionate about the process, the freedom. Just being an entrepreneur, I will buy or sell anything as long as it's moral and mostly legal. Am I crazy? Wrong?
You mean in terms of the passion?
Yeah, I don't care about passion. I'm passionate about woodworking, but I can't make a living as a woodworker. I do things that I like to do, like radio, so that I can go to Disney more frequently, which I am passionate about.
Right. Well, I think it depends. Some people are fortunate in that they can take their passion and also make money from it. But
Yes.
I think you're right that you should not expect that you're going to make money from your passion always. So I would say that my answer to that is it depends. So, I'm passionate about, developing, tech. So I've gone out and done that in a whole bunch of different places. So telecom, my voicemail thing, Gracenote, we supply even now for iTunes, there's 500 million lookups of, Gracenote data for music discovery and recognition. And that's happening, today, and that's in the music industry. And then I went off and built robots, ones that drove 6,000-pound vehicles at 90 miles an hour through the Mojave Desert.
And robots to cut grass. I love it. So innovative.
That's right. Right, residential lawnmowers. And Galaxia, I'm not sure if you heard about that one, where Christmas tree lights, you string them up on your tree or put them on a fence or, trees outside, and the way it works is it automatically maps all of the lights in real time, and you can actually send family photos or even a family video that's swirling around the Christmas tree. That got into the lighting industry. ChaCha is a search company. 1150 is a school. So, for me, I get passionate about, all of these different areas. I don't know that any one of them is my single passion. So I do think that whatever you're going to end up, pouring yourself into, you have to have enough energy and passion behind it to stick with it, long enough for it to be successful, right? So, but your example of Disney or woodworking, may not pay the bills. That's true as well.
Right. Scott, I could talk to you for another 65 hours. You are an amazing guy with some amazing accomplishments. I love your views and thoughts on everything. Thank you so very, very much for honoring us today.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it, and look forward to talking again sometime.
I would love to have you back, Scott.